Virtual Racing School was developed to provide support to the next generation of sim racers. No matter if you're a rookie or veteran or what car or track you'll be racing, our goal is to provide training every step of the way. We found that iRacing can be quite difficult without proper training. There needed to be a way to prepare for on-track racing. With VRS, you can literally learn from the best sim racers in the world, including 4-time NASCAR iRacing World Champion Ray Alfala.
And Ray Alfala is a 4-time champion of the NASCAR GT3's iRacing series.
3-time iRacing Grand Prix World Champion Martin Kroenke.
Martin Kroenke becomes a 3-time world champion.
Rallycross World Champion Mitchell de Jong.
Mitchell de Jong is now champion for the iRacing Rallycross World Championship Series.
And many other top sim racers. Data packs include everything you need to start learning. Our World Championship coaches create the data packs by setting a hot lap or a series of fast laps for you to compare, analyze, and replicate. Data packs also include a tutorial where the coach points out techniques they use to hit the fast lap. This gives you access to the latest driving techniques and setups before you even hit the track. Sign up for a free account and download the VRS telemetry logger. With this application running seamlessly in the background, your laps automatically start syncing to the VRS website. From there, you can analyze and compare 2 laps of your choice, whether it's your data, the coaches, or your teammates. VRS will automatically target improvement opportunities so you can get up to speed even faster. VRS also makes it easy for you to request and schedule one-on-one or group coaching sessions. These sessions can range from 30 to 90 minutes, and you can select the car, track, and setup combination of your choice. Visit virtualracingschool.com today to sign up and get started.
Good evening and welcome to the Finding Speed GT3 League final round of the season here from Suzuka on Apex Racing TV. What a season it's been as well. 5 rounds going across the world, Europe and North America, and now wrapping up in Japan, of course, at the historic Suzuka circuit. We've had a fantastic season so far here in these GT3s. And we're looking forward to another cracking race today out there with 32 cars out on track. My name's Lee Thompson, looking after you today for commentary with Dane Baird alongside me and Samuli Kumo working the production in the background. Dane, we've really enjoyed looking after this season on these 5 races so far. It's been kind of frantic racing the whole time, even though they've been 45-minute races in these GT3s. They felt very much like kind of sprint races.
Yeah, that's definitely right. We have seen the drivers really going at it. There's not been anything like you might see in PESC where everyone waits for the very last lap to just make their overtakes. You see big trains all the time. None of that here. There's been non-stop action throughout almost every single second of the race. There'll be someone involved in a battle that we can keep our eye on. So yeah, it's been good for the first 4 rounds. Hopefully we can continue that trend at Suzuka, which isn't usually a circuit that provides too much in terms of overtaking opportunities. Hopefully we can see some of those here today in this final round of the season. Still in every single championship, I believe. It's all to play for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. It's looking pretty close out there. We'll have a look at the championship standings right now. In fact, now what we need to keep in mind is that for the championship standings, the drivers get 1 dropped round through the 5-round season. So their lowest score will get dropped. that these standings don't yet include that. So hopefully at the end of the race tonight, we'll see those updated standings, see how the drop week then affects it, and we'll have our provisional results. But for now, as far as we're concerned, in the Pro Gold category, leading all season long is Tom Dadswell. So he's been pretty dominant for the whole season, apart from last time out. Then Yusu Kataya is in second with 143 points, Jensen Edgenson's in third, Stephen Broomfield fourth, and Mikko Malkavara in fifth, who had a very good result last time out. In the Pro Silver class then, we have got Stin van Neeren leading just by that one single point we can see over Dara Adrianson's. So real tight battle there between the Ignium Motorsport driver and Indy Autosport driver. There's still just a few points behind then is Anthony Beck. So again, we'll have to see how the drop round affects those standings. But at the minute, there's a little bit of a gap then back to Jekka Boshoff and Juan Manuel in fifth position. On to the Pro Bronze, and I think we're going to see a pretty similar tight battle through those top spots that we can see. So Timothy Bray there with 142 points, a little bit of breathing space at the minute, but then it's super close look for the rest of the podium in the Bronze Championship. Kosh Kelly 130, Alex Peck with 128, and Angel Pedrero with 127. Ed Knight then just a couple of points further back in fifth. So yeah, all three championships really looking super close at the top. Will really be interesting to see where they end up after this final round. Then in the Teams Championship, Race Gear currently have a little bit of a margin over Indy Autosport, and then Ignium Motorsport just a couple of points back. Altitude Esports in fourth, and then Ignium Motorsport Spark another 25 points further back in fifth position. So like I say, it's kind of a lot of intrigue here in the commentary booth of how the championship standings are going to end up with the drop week still to be found out, really, Dane.
Yeah, so even after the checkered flag, depending on where all the drivers end up, it might not be massively obvious as to who's actually going to finish where in the championship. Although one thing is pretty much certain, is that if Dadswell does end up winning this race, he has almost certainly won the championship out in Pro Gold, but it's very close in quite a few other categories. And having a look at the timing tower in practice, of course, so far. Still a couple minutes left of that before we head into our 20-minute open qualifying session with all the cars out on track at the same time. It is Dadswell who's out in front, but it's not the big gap that we usually have with him between him and everyone else in practice. He usually has quite a lot of time to get into the swing of things and set a relatively very quick lap, but only 2 to 2.5 tenths of a second the gap between himself and Malkavara, and then you've got Nealon just behind by another 10th, and in that Pro Silver category, third overall, and there's Erden in the Bronze category as well, not too far behind either.
No, good to see, as normal, the silver and bronze drivers mixing it up at the front. Like I say, looking promising. We've got just a few minutes left of this practice session, then we're into our 20-minute open qualifying, before then we move on to our 45-minute long race with the mandatory pit stop due to fuel restrictions. So generally in the race, the guys will stop somewhere between sort of 1/3 and 2/3 through the time, and yeah, the strategy really hopefully will help mix things up and keep the intrigue going right to the end of the race. Yeah, so we got just about 1 second between first overall and 14th overall. So yeah, looking also a little bit further up than that, sorry, so 12th overall. So yeah, looking super close already. It'll be interesting to see how that translates into qualifying. Good to see, yeah, Malkavara really there kind of challenging Dadswell. As we said, he had a very, very strong round last time out at the Nürburgring. So yeah, hopefully he can continue that streak, and we'll see how the drop rounds from earlier in the season push him maybe a little bit further up the standings than he is right now. Malkavara currently down in 5th in the Pro Gold class, but I feel like yeah, he may well jump up a fair chunk.
And it's also interesting to note, just for anyone who hasn't watched this series before, the points between the driver classes, so Pro Gold, Pro Silver and Pro Bronze, they're all separate. So first in Pro Gold will score you the same number of points as first in Pro Silver and first in Pro Bronze, and so on with second, third, and so on. The drivers are not fighting for points between the classes. However, in qualifying, it's all open. Everyone is fighting for the same spots on the grid. So when you've got Nealon up there in first overall, he's got 3 places back to Boshoff in second. In terms of points, if this was the race, it would still just count as first and second. But if this was qualifying, he would still have that 3-car gap between himself and the driver. So qualifying is all open, but in the race, it's more just managing the traffic of the other drivers in other classes rather than actually fighting with them for points.
Yeah, I'd say kind of adds an extra dynamic to it, doesn't it? We've got races within a race, so yeah, for sure that's something that the guys need to take into consideration. Another thing they need to take into consideration is the kind of balance of performance with these GT3 cars that we've been seeing this season, and generally we've seen the Porsches looking the strongest, and that seems to be the same again today. 4 of the top 5 are currently Porsches, with just that lone Lamborghini then for Neon in 3rd position overall. And then we've got a little bit of a cluster of BMWs a touch further down as well, just as we see on the timing tower. So yeah, we've got our normal lone McLaren Dane of Stephen Broomfield. We've got a couple of the Audis from Paul L and from Patrick Gannon, who hasn't put a time in practice yet actually, and that's kind of interesting because we saw him pretty close to the front last time out, really battling hard for a class win.
Yep, and that is the end of practice then, and the drivers will all be heading straight out onto the circuit as they usually do. There they all are, getting into their pit boxes now onto the circuit, trying to find themselves a place to draft. We sort of talk about this every single race meeting, and it's always a bit of a question as to whether getting in the draft is going to help you more than it will hinder you, as a couple of drivers going side by side out of the pit exit. And they're all going to try and find some clear air, but are they going to try and find a large amount of clear air, like a good couple of seconds, get right out of any dirty air slipstream that's in front of them from other cars, or are they going to try and tuck in close to somebody and use the advantage down the straights? There are 3 sections of the circuit where that would be advantageous, but then you've also got these S's and the whole of the first sector and quite a bit of the middle sector as well, where maybe that's not what you would want.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to rely a fair bit just on pure kind of luck for that, right? You like say you need a clear track for the first 2 sectors, exactly as you say, and then coming out the spoon curve, it would kind of be ideal then if you've just sort of started catching the car in front and you get the toe all the way down the back straight towards 130R, and then even maybe a tiny bit off of the final corner as well. That's kind of what you're after. So I think it's going to be pretty tricky to kind of plan that out unless you're organising with your teammate. Like you say, I think that's going to be too much of a struggle to be tucked up behind someone through the first sector. So interestingly, Dane, something I hadn't picked up by looking at the names in the session, current championship 2nd position pro gold driver Yusi Kataya is not in the session today. He's just watching on the broadcast with us in YouTube, not driving out there on tracks. So that's obviously going to have a big effect on the championship. That really takes the pressure off of Dadswell a little bit, of having one less driver who was really there fighting with him to have an opportunity to challenge in this final round. So it feels like it's going to leave it then much more down to Malkavara, who we're on board with at the minute, and also Jensen Adriansons as well. But yeah, no Kataya.
Yeah, that's definitely going to put the pressure off, or take the pressure off of Dad's squad there. Just had a little bit of an incident into the Casio Triangle, where I think a couple of the drivers, quite a lot of the drivers, so forming a sort of slow train, similar to what we see in F1 and Monza, and they were just trying to get a good exit out of there, get a bit of a gap, and I think it was Ed Knight just did not see that coming out of 130R and had a bit of a moment trying to avoid them. Luckily he did avoid them and no one got too much damage from that, as someone's run wide through turn 1. We'll be taking a bit of an onboard lap at the moment on board of Dan Ocaranta, heading through the first sector now, through the S's. Very long one right here, through the right, then try and get it as far to the right hand side as possible before swinging back left, up over the hill, and then back down towards the deck list. And this is quite tricky, because if you want a bit too wide, it's very bumpy on the exit curve. You can't really take too much of it. There is an off-track out there as well, so in qualifying you definitely don't want to be taking too much of that curve. Through there pretty nicely, now into the kink before the braking zone of this hairpin. Many different lines you can take through here really, but very important to get the exit right, because you're now flat out all the way down into spoon. It's always curved, but still a pretty fast section of the circuit. So any speed that you can get out of that hairpin is going to be very advantageous. Now into Spoon, possibly one of the most important corner exits on the circuit here. Use all the width available on the outside, and this speed is going to carry you all the way down in towards that final braking zone at the chicane, the Casio triangle. So it should be more or less flat out, I believe, in these cars maybe. Might be wrong here. Yep, there he goes. Bit of a lift maybe. Oh, there's been a couple of incidents up ahead. He's going to avoid them on the grass. Bit loose on the brakes. Is he going to make it? No. There's going to be an off track there, and that's going to invalidate the lap time. Give him a slowdown as well, so the next lap is going to be a bit of a waste as well. That's very unfortunate stuff. It was looking like a pretty good lap there from Macaranta.
Yeah, it was looking pretty good, and like I say, yeah, that one incident between the two cars kind of ruined 4 cars qualifying laps, and it's extra frustrating somewhere like here at Suzuka, where it's such a long lap as well. You know, 2-minute long lap, and like you say, for Ocaranza then, yeah, presumably having his next lap ruined as well by the off track. He's going to be cursing under that helmet, I'm sure. But fortunately, they've got plenty of time with the 20-minute qualifying session, and so hopefully I get that opportunity again. We can see Tom Dadswell has already put his banker lap in with a 1 minute 57.79 as he then pirouettes into the barrier at Degner 2, was it? I just glanced away, but I think that's where it was. And but say he's already got his banker in, so we'll see if anyone's really able to challenge that. I said in practice that Patrick Gannon hadn't put a time in, and he's jumped straight up into 2nd overall, 1st in the Pro Silver class. So he's obviously feeling up to speed with the car and the circuit, yeah, despite not putting that time in the session.
Yeah, just very confident, no need to do any practice. It's just straight out there on his first flying lap, setting purple lap times. He's around about 3/10 off of the time set by overall leader Dadswell. It looks like he might have just run a little bit wide there through Spoon, and yes, you can see there he's got the off track, and that is his lap invalidated. He's going to reset back to the pits and try that one again, get some fresh tyres and yeah, some fresh tyres for the car, get a bit more speed out of his next lap. He's using old rubber here. We've got 20 minutes in open qualifying and no restrictions on the number of tyre sets that you can use. So he's going to come back out now and out towards turn number 1. Miko Markovara coming across the line. This is the end of a flying lap, pulling to the inside to shorten the distance between himself and the start-finish line, and puts himself on provisional pole position.
Absolutely, yeah. Stonking lap there from Miko. Remind me if I'm getting, or correct me rather if I'm getting muddled up, Dane, but wasn't it Miko that almost made me fall off my chair last week or last time out by telling me that he had never driven at Suzuka before?
You know, I think it was.
I'm pretty sure, right? So obviously in the last in the last 2 weeks, he has got up to speed very, very quickly with this his classic circuit. Yeah, still blows my mind. And I think he said he'd been on iRacing for like quite some time as well, right? It wasn't like he'd only been on here a couple of months or something. So anyway, hopefully he's enjoyed his practice as well, and discovered what an amazing circuit Suzuka can be when you hook it up right, for sure. So yeah, going to be interested to see if Dadswell can come back at him for the overall pole position. Right, so as we're heading in towards the kind of end of the first half of qualifying, if you like, let's have a quick message from our sponsor, Acertech Sim Sports. So thanks to them for sponsoring the Finding Speed GT3 League. And Acertech Sim Sports Invicta pedals are for the competitive gamer and racing enthusiast who want an immersive racing experience. The Invicta pedals have a hydraulic brake cylinder and a proper clutch point, and they differentiate from other manufacturers by having a true life feel and intuitive setup, all to give you the best and most realistic racing experience of driving on a real circuit. You can find out more about them and their products at acertech.com. So that's asetek.com. Also sponsoring the series this season has been Apex Racing Academy, and they provide 29 data packs for a variety of road and rallycross cars. Within those data packs you get the car setup, replay file, O-laps, B-laps, that sort of thing. They provide track guides and advanced track guides as well. There's integration with Virtual Racing School if you use their services, weekly group coaching services and more. You can find out more about them at apexracingac.com. So like I say, we're coming up to towards the 10-minute mark now for the qualifying session. Looks like Dave Erdin having a good start to his qualifying session with that current kind of pole position in the Pro Bronze class, but not having a good lap on this one, and his next lap is going to be ruined as well because he didn't get the run off of that final corner.
Is this the end of a flying lap for Tom Daswell? Definitely looks like it, taking a whole heap of curb on that triangle. He's got a little bit loose on the exit. That's not going to help his course too much. Pulls to the right-hand side of the circuit. And there's another fastest lap of the session so far. That's only 0.03 of a second between himself and Markovara, but he has just tipped him. And he is up into provisional pole with 9 minutes around about gone, so just over 10 minutes left in the session, so plenty of time still for those times to continue to tumble down, but yeah, back up onto the top of the time tower.
Yeah, great to see it being so close at the moment between the top two, let's say just a few hundreds between them, so hopefully that will translate into the race as well, and we'll see a great battle between them two all race long. Of course, again with the very long straights that we have for the back straight and the start finish straight, there's opportunity to kind of hang in the drivers in front toe a little bit as well. So even maybe if one of the drivers ends up like a 10th off or something, hopefully that will translate into them battling still all race long. So let's have a quick kind of glance at where we're up to as we're halfway through the session. So we know that Dadswell has got overall pole position with Malkovara in second, as we've been talking about those throughout. Patrick Gannon just improving his time and cementing his current pole position or lead position for the Pro Silver class, with still Stin van Nielden in second, but yeah, just a 10th behind or so. Then in the Pro Bronze, yeah, we got David Erdin still leading that class, and Timothy Bray again just about a 10th or so behind. So although they've got a silver driver between them at the minute, yeah, super close there as well. So yeah, all three classes we've got a 10th or less really between the top two on each one.
And back up.
Yeah, sorry Dane, absolutely. So
instantly Dadswell back out as well.
So yeah, Dadswell going out to respond. You literally see that the outlap icon appear as that lap from Malkovara comes in. So yeah, good to see. Yeah, another best part of a 10th found from Malkovara on that one. And I dare say again, if one of them gets a bit lucky with traffic, it could make quite a difference as well. Again, if they just catch, as Dadswell catches the outside curb, I think, on Spoon. Yeah, if one of them catches the draft at the right time, that could suddenly make a big difference for one of them as well.
And you can expect to see that happen a good few more times throughout the course of the evening. The curbs here at Suzuka, although they are almost flat, are absolutely treacherous. There's a very slight, it must be said, maybe 2 inches lip between the end of the curb and the AstroTurf on the other side. As oh dear, this is going to cause trouble for quite a few drivers. That was a huge impact for Robert Odam, as he already didn't have a qualifying lap there because it looks like he spun out a Spoon curve already, but something else happened that by the alternate pit lane. As I was saying, yeah, you've got those curbs. They have a bit of a lip, and if you're on the curb, you're all good. If you're over the curb, you're all good. If you go between and your tires just fall off that lip, that's your car spun around. And it happens at Spoon, it happens at turn 1, and it happens at 130R. And we will almost definitely see it happen more often as we head throughout the event. And as the tires start to wear and the drivers start to push a little bit wide, it will start to happen a little bit more. So either side of the curb and you're fine. But once you just transition from one side to the other, that's when the car gives up on you, and it will spin you around at a moment's notice, and there's nothing you can do to save it. So it's definitely something we will see more often. Dadswell overheating his tires there as well, so maybe he won't have the coolest tires heading into his next lap, which he is around about just out of the first sector heading into the Daytoners at the moment. He's got to try and make up about a 10th to catch up and try and retake that provisional pole.
Yeah, and I think Malkovara just found like another 100th or so a couple of moments ago as well. So yeah, he was still pushing hard, trying to counter Dadswell's any improvement that he could make. But yes, it wasn't a big chunk of time that time by. Looks like Dave Erdin's jumped a fair bit further forward in the Pro Bronze class as well, isn't it? We can see that he's 6th over overall first in the Pro Bronze class, 58.192. So yeah, mixing it well and truly with the silver and gold drivers around him. And yeah, that leaves Timothy Bray now second in Pro Bronze, just over 3/10 behind. So yeah, he's really kind of broken the back of that for now, as Erdin. And say he's been looking strong, particularly in kind of the second half of the season, has Erdin. Let me just remind myself how he's looking in the Pro Bronze Championship. He's still kind of, it's surprising, he's still kind of nowhere in the championship actually, is Erdin. So yeah, he must have really had a tough first couple of rounds then, and then kind of came back. So yeah, he had a did not start in round 2. And so again, it's likely then, isn't it, that with the drop rounds coming in, Dave Erdin could well end up challenging somewhere near the front of the championship standings after the end of this race if he can get a good result. But yeah, at the minute he's kind of buried in 12th in the Pro Bronze Championship.
Yeah, I think a similar sort of thing has happened with Bradbury, who we saw a few races in the season, did pretty well. Wasn't there for the last race, I believe, and isn't here tonight either. But pretty far down the order for someone that we've seen up near the front multiple times in the season so far. But I would reckon that he would probably gain a couple of positions when all is said and done here. So we've got a car getting out of the way. Through 130 are the drivers go. There's not really much need when they're on fresh tyres to run too far out there. Nowhere near the curb on the outside. Sticking to the left-hand side gets them a better run in towards the chicane. Out the chicane comes Alex Peck. And is this the end of a lap or the start of the lap? We're about to find out. Over the line. It was the end of a lap and the start of a new one. It looks like no signs of slowing down for Peck. It wasn't an improvement last time by, but only just maybe 7/10 of a second. Oh, it gets a bit loose in towards turn number 1 and 2 as well. And that's gonna not start his lap off the best way possible, but see if he can try and recover from that. There is there are a lot of Pro Bronze drivers out on the track at the moment, and they're very close in terms of qualifying as well, just looking down the timing screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, kind of Erdin and Bray are kind of, yeah, ahead of the pack a little bit, but then, yeah, from third downwards in Pro Bronze, no, you're not wrong, Dane. That's a good spot. Yeah, super close. 58.8, 58.9, 59 flat, for 2 more 59 flats, then a couple of ones before then we get into a 59.4. So, yeah, good sort of 5-6 of them within just over a tenth or so. So, yeah, that's going to be an entertaining battle through the race as well in the Pro Bronze class. And exactly like you say, we have got a fair chunk of those Pro Bronze drivers out there today. Yeah, just seeing now Neon going through turns 1 and 2. We saw how tricky it was a moment ago for the car we were watching before. Yeah, it's a super tricky section of a track, especially in these kind of GT3 cars where they're not super high downforce. You know, you're wanting to take as quick an entry as you can into turn 1, but you've got to be setting yourself up for the 2, you know, slowing the car down as you're turning through 1. How wide are you going to risk kind of going on the exit of turn 1, entry at turn 2, for, you know, where you could run out of track, get onto that curb, get onto the green AstroTurf on the outside, compromise your exit out of 2. It's kind of a really interesting pair of corners to try and balance like how aggressive you're going to be on the entry versus kind of how good a run you're going to get to start working your way up the hill through the S's. Tom Dadswell hasn't really managed to start bringing back that challenge on Malcavaro, has he, Dane?
He's only going to get one more chance as well, by the looks of things. He's got about 30 seconds to get back to the start-finish line before he will run out of time to start a new lap after that flying lap. So it's going to be tight for him as he went into the pits there to just a few moments ago, caught it on the screen, and looks like he overshot the pit entry, which we saw a couple times at the Nürburgring for round 4, and it cost quite a few people a lot of positions. So something that the drivers definitely do need to be practicing, and definitely will help them as time ticks over to 18 minutes and 3 seconds, which means that no one else that starts a lap from now is going to be able to finish that lap within the end of the session. The session will allow the drivers to finish their laps, but of course it will be past the 20-minute boundary, which means the checkered flag will be out, and that will be their qualifying session over. So for the final time, Tom Dadswell will start a qualifying lap.
He certainly does. So we can see that was kind of him building up on that last lap for this final attempt that he's got. So hot into that tricky turn 1, turn 2. Looked pretty clean. Hit the apex on 1, out to the outside curb on 2. A little bit too much maybe curb on the entry of 2 there on the apex. But now comes the, say, super tricky Essex, where you're kind of balancing the throttle and the brakes and the steering to try and keep as much momentum as you can all the way through, not let the car slide if you can help it, because you're just going to be overheating the tyres all the way up, giving yourself less grip for the next one going on. Then up for Dunlop curb, super tricky as you come up over the crest as well. Again, looking very, very clean so far from Dadswell, but what is it going to be to challenge Malcavara into Degner 1? Big hit of that inside curb. Degner 2 gets it slowed down okay, though. Run out wide over that green AstroTurf on the exit of Degner 2. Then we got this little kink heading into the hairpin that we watched before. Hard on the brakes, and another early turn in from Dadswell. So Dane was rightly saying that there's different opportunities in the hairpin for lines that you can take, and both the cars that we've been on board with so far have kind of turned in like very early into the hairpin and tried to carry the momentum through the corner. Now we're coming up towards Spoon Curve again, super tricky, a bit like turns 1 and 2 really, where you're kind of going quicker into the first apex and you're trying to slow it all the way around into the end of Spoon Curve. A little bit of curb on the inside was nice, runs out wide as well. It looks super clean and fast at the minute, but again, is it going to be enough to challenge for this pole position on Malcavara? Just 130R to come. We heard a little bit of a lift on the last car we're on. Was it this time? Oh, pretty much flat, I think, Dane, wasn't it? Didn't really hear a lift on that one. Now into Casio Triangle, hard on the brakes. Is he going to scramble all over the curb on the inside? He does a little bit of a clip, bit more on the second one, gets a good drive off the corner. He's going to stay tight to the pit wall, we'd expect. And the moment of truth, was it going to be enough? Can he beat that 157.5? He goes into the pit wall, and I'm guessing he knew then that wasn't quick enough, Dane. And we don't get a time come up on the timing screen to see what it could have been. But it looked clean, and obviously on his Delta, Dane, it just wasn't quite enough coming off of Casio.
Yeah, the tap to the pit wall is what caused it to not be clean. I think it looked very clean up until that point, but yeah, probably just not enough of a delta. It was obviously very close though, because it took him right into the line to realize he wasn't quite going to make it. Still, drivers out on the circuit setting lap times, I believe, was a minute past the end of qualifying. So anyone who crosses the line now is finishing their lap, and that will be the end of it.
And so we hear from Simulion Production, that the estimate was that Dadswell was looking about 3 tenths down on Malcavara. So that's what he lost throughout the lap there. But like I say, it looked good from the onboard. So you can see that both those two operating at a very high level to get into the 57s. And we actually ended up with 5 drivers in the 57s in the end. Yeah, 5 of them scraped into the 57s. So yeah, super good job from all of them. So yeah, we're just waiting for the session to roll over, as we've still got a car out on track, just keeping the session active. And then once we've had that, we can confirm the starting grid then for this the 5th and final round of season 3 of the Finding Speed League here from Suzuka. What a fantastic circuit for us to finish the season on as well, and hopefully it will bring us some more great racing like we've seen the rest of the season. Right, so the session is just going to be rolling over momentarily, as I think we saw the car coming over the checkered line on one of the scenic shots a moment ago, and then we'll see the grid.
And just like the session wants to make us wait, everyone is off of the circuit. No one is on the circuit. There are actually some drivers in the pits that haven't crossed the line, and whilst those drivers are in the pits and not in the garage, they will be counting as on the circuit to iRacing, so iRacing doesn't want to kick them off. So we will have to wait for another 20 seconds or so before we can get the drivers to grid up. And then, 45 minutes of racing for the final time of the season. And looks like Dadswell is going to have his work cut out for him for possibly one of the first times this season against Malcavara. Usually he's ahead, and maybe some mistakes creep in that cost him some wins here and there, but usually he's the best driver on the circuit. But right now, it's like Malcavara has tipped him for that pole position, and we'll see what they can do out in front in the race. You've got to go back to 5th overall to find the first Pro Gold driver.
Yeah, like I say, the 2 Pro Silvers there really mixing things up at the front. Right, so now we can, the session's finally moved over to gridding phase. We can see the cars in the background there queued up behind the pace car. So now we can confirm those grid results. Mika Makavara, as we saw, taking overall pole position, 157.507. It was just a whisper over a tenth on Tom Dadswell in the end for Altitude Esports. Then third overall, first in Pro Silver, is Stijn van Neeren, with Patrick Gannon then in fourth, Robin Kubin in fifth, with Alan Garrett in sixth. Dave Erdin then did take the pole position for Pro Bronze, seventh overall, with Dominicus Yevasea in eighth. Cole Gray actually jumped up unnoticed by me for Pro Bronze, so yeah, good job from him to get that second position in bronze. Paul L then 10th overall, with Christian Volkner in 11th. Timothy Bray then ended up in 12th, with Anthony Beck 13th, Brad Crouch in 14th, and Richard Jones in 15th. Ed Knight in 16th, with Jakob Boshoff in 17th. Stephen Broomfield then in the lone McLaren in 18th, with Luke Davis in 19th. Colin McKenzie in 20th, with Kosh Kelly in 21st. Robert Odoms in 22nd, with Matt Knudsen in 23rd. Phil Reagan having a little bit of a tough time, it looks like, in 24th, with Angel Pedrero in 25th. 26th is Alex Peck, with 27th Darren Doherty. Dan Ocaranta, who we had that on-board lap with a little bit earlier on, in 28th. Steve Brown in 29th. David Villarano in 30th. Carlos Espada in 31st. And Ollie Morgan lining up in 32nd position. So that's who we've got out on track today. 32 cars. We see them all lined up there just before 1:30R. So it's just going to be a short section of the pace lap, and then we will be green flag out of the Casio Triangle and thundering down into turn one. I hope, Dane, that as normal the guys can get themselves through, well, not just turns 1 and 2 really, turns 1, 2 and the S's, and if they can manage to get through pretty cleanly up to that point, then hopefully we should be on for a good race.
Yeah, they usually do sort of single out into single file by the end of the S's, but if they don't, then we can see a few hairy moments. It's not the widest circuit in the world, Suzuka, so we'll have to wait and see how they get on. The pace car pulls off to the right-hand side of the circuit, and the field is under Malcavara's control.
Yeah, and he goes super early, Dane. So Malcavara's gone already, caught Tom Dadswell napping a little bit, and Dadswell's going to be under pressure from Neon. So Dadswell actually goes defensive from Neon, who's going to be overlapping him, I think, on the outside. Then Gannon, then Carragher. Yeah, Malcavara's got the comfortable space into turn one. Dadswell just trying to hang on the inside. He does keep that inside position, so holds on to second place. And then already pretty much into single file for the first 15 cars. Dane looking pretty tidy at the minute. I'm not seeing any cars falling down in order with an issue further down the field, so that's great to see. And a little dive up the inside from the Nitro Racing car there. I think it would have been Alan Carragher, but just about managed to back out of it. I saw that being a corner contact on that one, but nice and clean. And already they're working their way up through Dunlop Curve. And yeah, fantastic start the whole way through the grid. Dane, not a single car has moved more than 1 or 2 positions forward or back.
Yep, and yeah, no incidents
right,
so far. As I say that, oh dear, I've commentator cursed half the field. That's a lot of drivers involved in that one. Looks like maybe 5 drivers are involved, and oh, it's a bit of an off-free join from Juvesa, getting in the way of a couple of Ferraris. Now they're trying to avoid each other, and more carnage in the background as it's like, oh,
Carragher as well. He was running sort of 5th or so overall, so that's a real shame for Alan there, having a problem at the hairpin. So separate incident, it seems. I think it was Dave Erdin who not necessarily started it. We don't know why he lost control. Maybe he had contact from someone else, but it was Dave Erdin, I think, that was careering along the grass on Degner 2, presumably, say, losing control through Degner 1. So that was really unfortunate. Like I say, it was a cracking job from the whole field to get through half a lap there without incident, really. And unfortunate that those, yeah, like I say, half dozen cars or so in the end got caught up. Timothy Bray, that means then, because Dave Erdin, you know, we saw having that incident, Timothy Bray inherits the Pro Bronze lead. So he's currently battling in 9th overall, and say in his Pro Bronze lead. And so he will be trying to keep his head down and ensure that Ed Knight, who we're seeing on screen now in 2nd, can't close the gap and put him under pressure anytime soon. So yeah, Makavara at the front, then Dadswell, then Neon, then Gannon, then Kubin, then L, Beck, Jones, Bray, and then Stephen Broomfield gaining 8 positions as Ed Knight, was it? I think it was Ed Knight just losing control. Yes, it was on the middle of turn 1. We talked about how tricky that turn 1, 2 and 2 kind of conversion is, and we saw it right there. Issue as well for Brett Crouch, somewhere off of the exit of turn 2, and he's struggling maybe with his disconnection as well. But yeah, a couple of unforced errors there perhaps at the start of lap 2. But like I say, yeah, those couple of corners, Dane, can be really tricky.
Yeah, the turn 1 especially, just looks like he got loose, tried to catch it, maybe he put in a little bit too much steering lock and then swung the other way. It was a bit of an odd one, but really all over the place on that car. But I do take, raise my hands, I take full responsibility for that first incident at the deck, because that was a massive commentator's curse there on quite a few drivers. It's still Malkabar out in front, it's worth mentioning, with Dadswell behind him nearly in third. As looking at the timing screen, no one in the top 5 has changed positions so far, but that's the top 3 or 4 positions in Pro Bronze seem to be a bit unlucky at the moment. We're seeing quite a few instances from drivers inheriting those positions. As we look a bit further down in the Pro Bronze at Matt Knudsen, and he has gained 4 places from where he started at the beginning of this race after 1.5 to 2 laps so far, with 1.8 laps it's saying on the timing screen he's done. So yeah, just gaining some places, trying not to get involved in any of the incidences. Oh, he runs a bit wide at 130R. He'll pick up an off track, but nothing more than that. He managed to get all over the curb instead of transitioning over the curb, so he avoided the auto spin. As Colin McKenty down into the pits, that's definitely not scheduled, so possibly some damage there. Brad Crouch also into the pit, so maybe that's the incident that we might have seen heading out between turns 2 and 3 at the beginning of this lap.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for both of them. I mean, say we talked about the mandatory pit stop required for your race, but we think it's going to be too early for that. Then the limited fuel that they're going to be able to take on, I think, to carry them to the end of the race. So that's going to be tricky for them continuing on. Yeah, watching those Pro Bronze cars a minute ago, so that's going to be a group to keep an eye on all race long. I think we saw how close it was for like the mid pack of the Pro Bronze drivers in qualifying, and so far in the race that looks to be continuing on. Here's Malkavara then, just trying to build a little bit of a gap over Tom Dadswell. It's been floating around 1 second to 8 tenths for the last kind of lap and a half or so. Dadswell just hanging in the coattails for a minute, but yeah, Malkavara is great to see, feeling confident out on track at the minute. Patrick Gannon then is going to be looking at under a little bit of pressure from Roman Kubin possibly anytime soon, so just like half a second or so between them two as well. In fact, sorry, it's Gannon, the one that's closer on Neil, sorry, so Gannon that's pressuring Neil in front of him for that Pro Bronze, Pro Silver first position.
Yep, and Kubin just behind as well. That 3rd place in Pro Gold, but 5th place overall, and he's trying to catch up to them as well. Won't be for points, he'll have to catch up to Dadswell to score any more points than he currently will be. But it's always fun having a bit of battle out on the circuit, so we often see the drivers battling out with each other anyway. You've raced it into the pits from 5th place in Pro Gold. Gannon says the fastest lap of the race in the Pro Silver category. Those fastest laps are, I believe, dependent on the car classes, and they're not just overall. So he's faster than Nealon on that last lap, definitely closing down the gap, and it's a very small gap at the moment. I think if he closes it down anymore, he'll have to start trying to make a move, because he's going to run into the back of that Lamborghini Huracan just in front of him.
Yeah, kind of two almost identical cars, isn't it, between the Lamborghini and the Audi, just a different body shape really on the two cars, otherwise very, very similar. But as we saw in practice, yeah, Gannon looking confident in that car, and again, hopefully we're going to continue to see this battle for a long time to come between Nian and Gannon. Looks like Dadswell closed a little bit. We saw up ahead there briefly on Malkavara as well, so yeah, he's close to within 3 tenths now, when it was that 8 tenths to a second a lap ago. And Gannon hard onto the brakes, into the hairpin, trying to get the run off of that corner, set himself up for a good position coming out of Spoon Curve in a minute, and see if he can get the run down the long back straight. So as they head into Spoon then, yeah, what kind of balance is Gannon going to be able to keep of how close underneath that rear wing can he get of Nian? Both look pretty tidy through there. I think maybe Nian just a fraction wide off the apex on the exit Spoon, and yeah, we can see that that's given Gannon the opportunity just to try and tuck right up under his rear wing. As Nian going to go defensive and push Gannon to the outside. He just kind of sits in the middle of the track a little bit, but not quite enough Gannon to get an overlap. And Nian just struggling on 130R, as does the car in the background. Kubin it is. Oh, hard into the wall. Kubin more than struggled through 130R. So heavy hit from him. And yeah, he's going to need to pit for repairs.
Yeah, that was a huge impact to the wall on the outside. Not a massive amount of runoff there. It looks like it might be a driver struggling through a spoon curve as well. Getting a tiny bit loose, maybe running actually a little bit wide. There's all sorts of cars heading down in towards the Casio Triangle. Maybe a look up the inside for the driver 19th overall. That's Ocaranta. Tried to send it up the inside of Knudsen just in front, but it wasn't to be. Pulled out of it very well. Didn't get into the back of that 911 GT3R. But yeah, some pretty close battles out on the circuit between a few of the drivers. One of them is 3 tenths, and that is the gap between Tom Dadswell and Malcolm up in front. Oh, as Knudsen runs wide through turns 1 and 2, and that's going to allow not only Ocaranta but also Gray as well. So Carl Gray in the BMW there. There's a hefty amount of damage to the front of that car, I think, and to the back as well a little bit, it looks like. Involved in some incidents at the start of the race, I believe. Working his way up a little bit. He's down 11 places, yeah, from where he started. Of course, starting second on in the Pro Bronze category, involved in that incident here at the Degners. Oh dear, that's not a place you want to go side by side, and that is why it narrows up massively, and 2 cars somehow avoiding the wall, but both of them stuck really in an awkward place on the inside of the track on the grass. So a bit of contact there, hopefully not too much damage to the cars. It didn't look like massively heavy contact, Lee, but definitely contact that's cost them a lot of time.
Yeah, a lot of time lost, like you say. They're both lucky they didn't give a big hit to the wall as well. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said initially, then it's just not really a place you try and overtake into Degner 1, is it? So very optimistic it seemed like for Brown. You're relying really on the car on the outside bailing out of it. And yeah, Ed Knight decided not to, and it kind of inevitable contact ensued. So unfortunate for both of them, but yeah, kind of getting back up to speed again. David Villarano here for Nitro Racing Team. Oh, just touching the grass and taking his teammate out, Dane. I was just going to say that in the background a moment ago, whilst I was talking about the previous incident, I saw Villarano go very, very wide on Degner 2 and have a big moment on exit. And then he has another moment on the entry to the hairpin. He puts the right edge of his car onto the grass on braking, couldn't get the car stopped, and unceremoniously punted his teammate out onto the wall. So that is not going to be a very popular, very comfortable team discord a bit later on, I'm sure, when they catch up again. But unfortunate for them, Malcavara under a lot more pressure now from Dadswell. So how's their last laps? Yeah, I mean, Malcavara is just maybe dropping back on the pace ever so slightly. They're back into the kind of a high 58s, and we can see at lap 2 they were kind of half a second quicker than that. So Dadswell clearly feels that he can go quicker. He's got more pace available, and he's trying to give Malcavara a bit of a hurry up. We'll see if he is any kind of real sort of rush. Is he going to look to set up a move down that back straight towards 130R? We saw a minute ago, Dane, with it was Gannon, wasn't it, that we're watching the slipstream. It didn't really seem to be a huge amount of draft. I mean, unless Gannon come off of the loud pedal and decided just to sit there, he wasn't a mile behind and didn't really manage to get a huge amount of toe. But let's see if the same is now for Dadswell.
We'll see. It's Porsche on Porsche rather than Lamborghini or Audi. Maybe that's going to have a bit of a different effect. He does seem to be gaining. But yeah, you're right, not much at all. He lifts off, interestingly, and that is crucial. We have seen this many times before with the pit lanes, with the mandatory pit stop. It's a fuel-regulated pit stop, so they have to do it if they want to finish the race. If Dadswell decides he's faster, okay, fine, don't overtake him. Just lift off into the corners. If you know you're faster, lift off into the corners. You won't lose any time. You can see almost identical lap times last time by between the top 2. Lift off, save fuel. If you save fuel for the half an hour before the pit stops, a half an hour or so that we usually see in this series, then you can take a shorter pit stop because you don't have to put as much fuel into the car. And yeah, then you can overtake in the pit lane. And that's very effective. We've seen it many times before in this series, in other series. It's one of the biggest parts of strategy in short course racing in NASCAR as well, saving the fuel. So, and also obviously the speed race. But yeah, that's something that he might start to think about. He's not really usually in this position though, so maybe he won't think about it. That's what he's in this series at least very used to sitting out in the front. So we'll see what he decides to do, as he runs a little bit wide and a bit loose as well through Legna 2's exit. But yeah, that's definitely something he should keep in mind and try and save that fuel. There's just about a car's length between Van Nielen and Gannon for this battle for 3rd and 4th overall, but more importantly in terms of points, 1st and 2nd in Pro Silver.
Yeah, like I say, great to see the pair of little battles going on at the very front of the field for now. The lap times are really kind of dropping away quite quickly for both these little pairings. So last time by, both sets of say runners for Pro Gold and Pro Silver both lost sort of 3-4 tenths of pace just in a single lap. So we'll have to see how that kind of continues through the race. You know, does a particular driver manage to not have the same sort of degradation as others, and is Gannon going to get a bit more of a chance for an overlap this time? No, same again. He kind of tucks up under the rear wing but isn't really able to do anything about it before they get to 130R. You see the weather conditions up on the overlay as well. So 76 degree Fahrenheit track temperature. We'll maybe keep an eye on that a little bit later, see kind of how that affected things. But yeah, so certainly the lap times are dropping away. Dadswell just lost a couple of attempts that time by as well, so Malkovara's got a tiny bit more breathing space up front. Oh, and a bit of a wiggle there from Neon just as we cut away through turn 1. I think he got through turn 2 happily, but yeah, having to just correct that car a little bit. Timothy Bray in that Pro Bronze lead in the big BMW. Looked pretty nice in turn 1, missed the apex for turn 2 though, and just puts himself under pressure from Broomfield, and Broomfield almost getting into the back of him in the flame-spitting McLaren as they work their way through the S's. But Bray really just needs to try and keep his nose clean, doesn't he? So if he thinks Broomfield is being a bit too racy, sticking his nose in places he doesn't really want him to be, it might be better for him just to come off the throttle on one of the straights and let him by and stay with him. He needs to make sure his lead in that Pro Bronze class stays secure. Kosh Kelly is the next car back in Pro Bronze, who's looking a good sort of 6-7 seconds back. And there we go. I looked away, Dane. Was that a mistake from Bray, or has he done exactly what I said and just come off the throttle and let Broomfield by?
I think it was the latter. It looked like for a second he got loose, but I think he was just turning out to the inside of the circuit very quickly. You can see in that camera shot, he's got a small gap to Boshoff behind, but of course Boshoff is in a very similar situation to Broomfield, that his position relative to Bray means absolutely nothing other than keeping car between himself and the driver in second place in Pro Bronze, which is Kelly. But there is quite a substantial gap between Bray and Kelly, so that's not something that Bray needs to worry about, as we just about reached 1/3 distance in the race so far. Broomfield looking very feisty through that SS section, didn't he? And there's in his McLaren, and he'll be trying, of course, no points that he can really gain realistically. It's very unlikely he'll be catching up to the 2 fastest drivers in the series by quite some margin, but try and make his way up through the Pro Silver field in the top 5 of that category, and see how high up the field he can finish in this final race of the season as he crosses the line to start lap number 9. Oh, it looks like a bit of a lunge to the outside. He just about pulls out of that one, Alan Carisier. Of course, he obviously had that incident into the hairpin on lap number 1, as we've got a couple of pit stops being made. That's Cuban and Peck. Now, I know that Cuban already had a lot of damage to his car from that incident at 130R. I'm not sure if he got it fixed or not. It looks like he probably didn't, because it looks like there is a lot of quite a lot of scratches on the left side of his car, but I'm not sure about Peck. And it looks like scheduled pit stops are coming in now. A lot of drivers with damage coming into pit early and fueled up to the end.
Yeah, like I say, that makes sense, doesn't it? You've been kind of struggling on through the rest of the race. At the earliest possible moment you think you can get away with it is a time to come in, and we were kind of bang on the 1/3 mark, weren't we, as they started coming to pits. So yeah, we'll keep half an eye on them a bit later in the race and see where they shake out with the rest of the runners not yet to stop. Yeah, Richard Jones is the next guy on Stephen Broomfield's hit list as he tries to continue moving his way forward next onto the Pro Silver drivers. Yeah, I think Timothy Bray did exactly the right thing there that lap ago, just letting Broomfield go. He's got plenty of space to the car behind, and just try and keep the pace up now by staying with the cars in front. That seems the sensible decision to make. So we're just settling into this phase of race now where we got a couple of little battles going on for different little pairings like we got on screen, but otherwise the guys are just kind of waiting to get to their pit stops and deciding on their strategy. Are they going to go early? Are they going to go late? Are they going to get caught by traffic on their outlaps? And we'll really see how that then affects things as they go into the second phase of the race. Here's a great view of our two pairings between the Pro Gold and the Pro Silver classes, Malkovara and Dadswell, and Nian and Gannon just kind of sticking his nose in slightly into turn one. And actually that kind of worked a little bit. Maybe it seemed like Nian then just missed his line a little bit into turn two, but he still managed to get a late apex and nothing then doing from Gannon. But Nian's doing a cracking job at the minute, Dane. He's been under pressure from Gannon like the whole race long so far. And we've not seen significant mistake, like I say, maybe an odd apex here and there, but it's not enough to now build Gannon an opportunity to try and get by.
But is Gannon fuel saving is a pretty good question. He seems to be glued to the back of that Lamborghini, so it wouldn't surprise me if he was able to just lift off in the corners every now and then and save even a lap of fuel. Even saving less than a lap of fuel is still worth it, because you'll be able to put in less fuel. If you can save over a lap, then of course you can pit a lap later, and that also helps when you get a bit of clear air in front of you. I reckon Gannon would love a little bit of clear air in front of him at the moment, but doesn't want to try and risk making a move. And the low risk option is to just chill behind and lift off into the corners as we ride on board. We'll see what happens. These guys aren't going to be pitting for another 10 minutes or so. If they pit when they usually do, that's almost every single race so far. They've been pitting on the half-hour mark, more or less. So hopefully they do the same, and we get a bit of a predictable strategy. We'll see now. Is he going to lift off? Yes, he does. Looks like it sounded like, at least for me, that Nealon also lifted off. Whereas we were looking at Dad's one, he was going completely flat through that part of the circuit. So maybe Porsche versus Lamborghini and Audi things, or maybe these two drivers just not pushing as hard.
Yeah, maybe. I think, wasn't it through qualifying that we kind of picked up on Dadswell not lifting? So I kind of wouldn't be surprised if they're all lifting to some degree kind of in the race through 130R. But yeah, like you say, for sure, Gannon, yeah, super close down that back straight, not really able to do anything about it before they got to 130R. But yeah, cracking view from the front bumper of Gannon as we work our way up through the S's. I mean, it's just such an obvious thing about classic circuits around the world, isn't it? Is that you have these great elevation changes, and yeah, it really adds something to the character of the circuit and the prestige and the racing that we get there. Interesting as well at the minute, Dane, through the S's and up through Dunlop, just seeing how much of a different line Nian and Gannon were taking. Nian was tending to try to open up the corners a lot more, carry a bit more speed, but he's travelling further. And Gannon was generally straightening them up just a little bit more and kind of keeping things a little bit tighter and a little bit tidier.
Yeah, and that's almost all down to the drivers. Obviously, certain cars will prefer different types of lines. Some cars are more momentum-based, whereas others are a bit more nimble. As you were saying earlier, the Lamborghini uses an Audi chassis and very similar cars under the hood. So when you've got these two cars, they're almost identical in terms of how they handle. They're both mid-engine, so it's definitely down to the drivers, their different styles of driving. So it is definitely interesting to see, and they're both setting identical lap times. So yeah, it really does show that, especially around this circuit, through some of the corners, you can definitely have very different lines. And he's once again extremely close as they make their way down in towards 130. Oh, you can see the tyre marks in the graphic from that incident earlier on in the race, and maybe a little bit of getting loose from Van Yellen into the braking zone there, but nothing major. And he will retain the Pro Silver lead across the line. It's like Dadswell's caught right back up to Malkovara as well, setting lap times 2 to 3 tenths quicker every single lap for the last few laps, trying to get back onto the back bumper of the Finnish driver in front of him.
Yeah, and it does seem those lap times have kind of stabilised after them kind of dropping away pretty consistently for like 4 or 5 solid laps. Stephen Broomfield sticking his nose up the inside of Jones into turn one. Not quite enough momentum that time by to make the move, but is he going to try a little bit of a cutback before the S's? It's a bit of a lunge if he does make it, but he decides to settle in this time by. But yeah, Broomfield feeling like he's still got the pace to try to move up another spot, if not in class, then overall. But yeah, like I say, yeah, starting to really come into the period where we're going to start to see more and more of these pit stops starting to come in, and we'll see if anyone does try to do anything different. Does either Dadswell or Gannon decide to try and go early because they feel like they've got a lot more pace and they just can't make the use of it with the car directly in front of them. I'd kind of be surprised if one of them can go a lap longer. I mean, it's such a long lap here, of course, at Suzuka, that you got to save a lot of fuel to make that work. So we'll have to keep a close eye on those kind of strategies. But yeah, no such concerns at the minute for Timothy Bray in that Pro Bronze lead. So he's still looking at sort of a 6-second gap or so to Kosh Kelly on screen now. Yeah, Kosh has gained 10 spots from his starting position on the grid. So yeah, great job from him to be staying in that second place in bronze and keep the pressure up on Bray. He's got a bit of breathing space as well to Luke Davis then 3-4 seconds behind him in third in class. Stephen Broomfield we see having a little bit of think before 130R, but nothing happening that time by. Is he going to make a little bit of a lunge into Casio? No, wasn't close enough, couldn't keep the momentum through 130R, but Jones super wide into the chicane there, but so was Broomfield, and Broomfield causes an incident, and Timothy Bray gets tangled up as well, keeps it out the wall. Timothy Bray's going to struggle to get it turned around in any kind of sort of time now. That was really unfortunate. We'll have to have a look at the replay in a minute to see exactly what happened with Broomfield. He just seemed to just drive straight into the unfortunate as well. It was kind of waiting to happen, wasn't it? Pedrero, it was that somehow didn't see Bray, kind of sat there stationary the whole time as he came off the chicane. But yeah, let's have a look at the replay then and see exactly what happened. Say both Jones and Broomfield overshot the first part of chicane. Broomfield had got a much better exit and just drove straight in the back of... Oh, it's because Jones was going in the pits.
Yeah.
So Broomfield got caught out by Jones going into pit lane. Yeah, drove straight into the back of him, and yeah, just Broomfield we were seeing was pretty eager the whole race and was just trying to take that opportunity as soon as he could. It's a shame that my advice that Bray took backfired. You know, letting Broomfield by to make his race safer ended up costing him the Pro Bronze lead. So really unfortunate for him.
We've not been very kind to the drivers today, have we, in the commentary booth? It's caused quite a few incidents. I would just like to say that Kosh Kelly, just looking at the driver photo, I did ask this a couple of weeks ago. I did wonder, is that a real snake? It is a real snake. He has 7 snakes at home. He keeps snakes, and that is a real snake wrapped around the headband of his headphones, and whilst it looks like he's in a flight sim. So that's something interesting about our current Pro Bronze leader. I've just seen that in the driver channel for the league in their Discord server, the Finding Speed Discord server, and yeah, he also has a bearded dragon. So that is interesting. I did always wonder when looking at that, is that a real snake or is that like a little plastic one? But no, it is a real snake, and he is leading. But unlike how Bray was leading, where he had a bit of a gap behind him, you'd say he's got half a second of a gap between himself and Davis just behind, and that is definitely a gap that he will want to try and increase as much as possible.
And into pit lane. So yeah, Kosh Kelly takes the earlier side of the pit stops, and yeah, like I say, we'll see how that shakes out in that Pro Bronze class once his challengers make their pit stop as well. But yeah, so really at the minute then, now that that kind of Broomfield-Jones-Bray battle got broken up, the only real pairings are still the top 2 Pro Gold and the top 2 in Pro Silver, still just half a second apart between each of those little pairings. Still Gannon just putting the pressure on the whole time, but not able to do anything. Still Dadswell putting the pressure on Malcavara, but not having that opportunity. Yeah, it's looking like a tough circuit out there to really even have an attempt at any moves. You know, we've just seen him kind of sat there within that half second pretty much all race long. So I'd be surprised if any of them goes, you know, kind of long, but I wonder if one of them is going to try and pit a lap early and try and do something different, because otherwise you'd kind of expect the status quo to remain all race long. Or of course all it would take is a mistake, but there's been no signs of that so far for Malcavara or for Neon. Both been running very solidly so far. Nian feeling need to go quite defensive on the approach to 130R, but no, it still wasn't an overlap from Gannon. But Gannon takes a big old chunk of inside curb on the 130R. Kind of expected him to struggle in the middle of a corner with the car getting a bit unsettled, but seemed to have no such issues. Pit lane, Malcavara into pit lane. There we go. So Malcavara has gone a lap earlier, as has Nian. So Nian and Malcavara have gone a lap earlier. The two cars behind, Dadswell and Gannon, have gone a lap later. So let's see, does like the whole field practically pit this lap? In which case, yeah, Dadswell and Gannon has gone long, or is it more that it's going to turn out that Malcavara and Nian have gone a lap early? We'll have to wait and see.
Looks like yeah, Boshoff has stayed out on the circuit. Brumfield stays out on the circuit as well.
So
having
yeah,
said that, those
then.
are all drivers that were in a bit of a train, sort of. So it is interesting. And then here come a lot of drivers into the pit, or a couple of drivers, I should say, leading the train. So it looks like every driver that wasn't in the middle of a train has pitted. So that could be very interesting. We'll see when the drivers come out. Malcavara still in the pits.
Oh wow, problems.
Oh, is that a penalty?
Malcavara. Yeah, perhaps he got. We had this earlier on in the season, I think, right? Somebody got a pit lane entry speeding limit, and we were trying to desperately figure out why someone sat in pit lane so long. Was it they were taking tyres? And yeah, it turned out there was a speeding penalty to the pit lane. So if that's what happened for Malcavara, that would be super, super unfortunate. Let's see if we can see anything obvious on board as he heads into to pit lane. Where are the yellow cones for the pit limit? No, looked fine.
Oh.
I mean, unless he screwed up.
Oh, the limiter didn't turn
limiter.
on. He floored it, thinking the limiter's on. That's great, and then the limiter didn't actually turn on, and he's just floored it and started accelerating through the pit lane. So that is awful for Malcavara. Really, he did nothing wrong. Maybe finger slipped off the pit limiter button. Oh, that's terrible. Back out onto the.
Yes, that's really unfortunate for Malcavara. That's dropped in now behind Kubin, who had already made his pit stop very, very early in the race. So, yeah, crazy. Dadswell makes his stop then, as expected, the lap after, as does Gannon immediately behind. So the pairing to watch now is going to be Gannon and Nian. Where are they going to come out in relation to each other? But yeah, crazy. I have a feeling as well it was another. It was one of the same cars, one of the race gear cars, I think, as well, that maybe had a similar issue early in the season. We'll have to go back and check. But yeah, certainly have a feeling it was the same livery. So where is Nian then, as he's going to be coming around the final corner any moment now? And Gannon needs to be getting out of pit lane super quick if he wants to be there and challenging. Dadswell pulls away, Gannon pulls away, so it looks a pretty clean stop for both of them. Here comes Steen van Nian working his way down the front straight. Where is he going to appear? It's going to be super close. I think Gannon is going to have this Dane into turn one. It does. Nian lost maybe a second or so through the pit stop phase. Going that one lap longer for Gannon has paid off. And yeah, that whole time sat behind Nian in the first half has paid off for Gannon. We'll see now if just the roles are going to be reversed. Like I felt like Gannon had a little bit of pace over Nian. Is that going to show, or is Nian now just going to be sat in the gearbox again and all the way through the remaining 50 minutes? We'll have to wait and see. Tom Dadswell, well, he's got kind of let off the hook a little bit, because again, that looked like an epic battle that was going to continue through the rest of the race. But now he's got, 2.5, 3 second lead over the Pro Silver drivers. But of course, the next Pro Gold driver is all of a sudden now Stephen Brumfield, who suddenly appeared in second position in Pro Gold class. So Dadswell really looking super, super comfortable for not only the class win, but of course the Pro Gold Championship win as well, because that, with his drop week, will give him the race win in every counted round in the championship. So that will be Dadswell secured for sure. Where has Timothy? I was going to see where Timothy Bray has kind of ended up after his incident, but yeah, unfortunately he's kind of nowhere now in the Pro Bronze class, all the way down in 10th position in Bronze after that damage, and then presumably he's taken his pit stop since then as well. So that's really unfortunate for him. Kosh Kelly still has a 2-3 second lead in the Pro Bronze class over Luke Davis. So after they came through their phase of pit stops, yeah, no change there in the Pro Bronze. But yeah, just shock at the very top of the standings. And so let's
Very odd. Ooh. Flash of the headlights. I think is that just the McLaren's pit limiter? Oh, they did this. Well, Broomfield did this in qualifying, and there we go. Makes an overtake in pit exit. How about that? Looks like one of the other drivers involved in this coming onto this right in towards turn number 1. Not the sight you really want to be seeing. Heading down the pit straight. All of a sudden, out come from the pits. Not one, but 2 cars side by side.
Yeah, super close for both of them. I say lucky they managed to avoid contact and didn't do anything too silly. It wasn't for class position, of course. It was between a Pro Gold and a Pro Silver, but nonetheless, yeah, Broomfield got that spot, and he's got a pretty clear track in front of him now, just to kind of keep his head down and make sure he can retain this this second spot in the Pro Gold class. Mika Malkavara then recovering 4th in Pro Gold. How much gap has he got to Kuban in front? 2.5 seconds or so to Kuban in front. So that's certainly doable for Malkavara to get back on the podium in Pro Gold. But yeah, devastation for Malkavara. I'm sure, like you said, it certainly seemed like he judged it nicely on pit entry, and just pit limits are not coming on. Really unfortunate. But yeah, if he can get a podium, then that'll be a strong result, at least for the final race of the season for him. And again, we'll see how that affects his championship standings as well once the drop rounds come into effect. So now that those pit stops are done, we haven't really got any obvious kind of huge battles going on. We've got a couple of yellow, couple of orange markers on our timer screen, which means between sort of 1 second or half-second gaps. One of those are on screen right now between Phil Reagan and Alex Peck, but not for class position. Reagan in Pro Silver and Alex Peck in Pro Bronze.
Gannon equally. Dazwell's lap time more or less, maybe a 10th difference out in front, but Dazwell still increasing that gap. Of course, really it doesn't need to be. You could drop back a considerable amount of time and still finish ahead of Broomfield, which is the next driver in his class that he has to worry about in terms of points, but out in front with just over 10 minutes left in the race, plus any time after the checkered flag begins to wave, as Alex Peck is right on the back of Reagan as we've been watching. Maybe actually looked a little bit loose there, the driver of the 396, and maybe a slowdown. Phil Reagan to the inside. Doesn't look like enough time lost to be a slowdown, really. It looks like he just let him pass.
Yeah, a little bit of a strange one there. And I think maybe say it was a little bit of a slowdown. Yeah, he's still trying to deal with something perhaps, but we'll have to see what he ends up doing. Cole Gray is going to be catching him pretty soon as well in the Pro Bronze class. He wants to try and jump ahead of Reagan, of course, and try and challenge Alex Peck in the next bronze position. So down to less than 10 minutes remaining in the race. Timothy Bray trying to recover. Ocaranza just in front of him, both for class position in Pro Bronze. We should see Timothy Bray being able to dispatch Ocaranza anytime soon, I think, because we've seen the good pace that Bray's had, well, all season long, but certainly in this race. We'll see Ocaranza struggling with the rear car, spinning off up ahead as well. That's Ocaranza's teammate of Dave Erdin in the Nitro Racing team. But had a little bit hot into Degner 1, I thought, then for Ocaranza, but he manages to get it slowed down enough. Timothy Bray very wide on the exit of Degner 2. He's going to have a bit of a lunge into the hairpin, not quite close enough this time, but very tight on the inside of a track for Ocaranza on the brakes. And yeah, that should give Bray a good opportunity to try and be in a good position for the exit of Spoon Curve and working his way down into 130R.
Yeah, so let's see what he can do. It looked like he almost tried to go all the way around the outside of the hairpin there for a moment. Oh, he's got on the curb. He's got over the curb, over the lip, but that's really not helped him at all. Drew Spoon, he got loose and actually caught it before it started to slide. I think he realised he was about to start to slide and yeah, tried to correct it even before that happened. He did a very good job of doing that. And luckily for him, Ocaranza ran wide on the exit of Spoon, slowing down and allowing Bray to catch back up down the back straight there. And now big deep brakes there for Timothy Bray, and we'll see now. He's actually got a very good exit here. This might be a good opportunity for him to try and get past, see if he can use the draft of the car. Unfortunately, he's in that massive old car, and he's got the tiny little Ferrari in front of him. We'll see. The draft is massively powerful, but he is going to get to the inside. He's going to be able to send it up the inside into turn 1. Yes, he is. And he gets that move done, does he? Yes, into turn 2. So great stuff for Bray, and he moves up into 7th. Just unfortunate that he isn't right up at the front.
Yeah, like I say, for sure he should be there challenging for the Pro Bronze win, fighting with Kosh Kelly. But yeah, nothing happening with that today. Again, he should be looking good for the championship, I'd imagine. But again, we'll have to kind of hold our breath on that until the end of the race when the drop rounds are taken into account, and see exactly where we end up. Looks like it's going to be pretty close at the minute between Alex Peck and Phil Reagan. Again, we switched perfectly on time, and actually it's becoming a 4-car train now. So Peck, Reagan, Gray and Carragher recovering from his incident earlier on still. So we should see Alan Carragher being pretty quick, I would think, through this little group of cars and trying to challenge us. Oh, I thought Gray there was just going to get into the back of Reagan, but just about managed to get it slowed down. We can see the car really squirming away, quite unhappy as he was trying to wrestle control of it. But yeah, these 3 cars now, Peck, Reagan and Gray, Reagan, Gray and Carragher, all going to be on top of each other as they come to 130R. And Carragher almost getting into the back of Reagan there as had a big old lift before 130R.
Let's see what he can do. There's a nice little train formed up at this part of the circuit here. I'm not sure if that's the Porsche or if that's just a bit of bent wing at the back for the driver at the very end. I think it's Carragher there. But definitely some wonky things going on with the rear wing of that Porsche's. Looked to the outside but couldn't quite get late enough on the brakes, and Phil Reagan retains that 7th position in the Pro Silver category, up ahead of course Peck and Gray in the Pro Bronze category, 4th and 5th. I'm interested to see what the gap is between Macavara and Cuban in 3rd and 4th in that Pro Gold category. I think it's only about half a second or so, maybe 6 tenths of a second. So maybe Macavara can salvage some points in that battle. Looks like, yeah, the 2 teammates, of course, as well at race gear. So yeah, Macavara catching up to Cuban. Of course, he had that big off at 130R earlier in the race. So both of the drivers having some incidents in the race, and Macavara very unfortunate not to be right up at the front, if not leading this race. Although I think Dadswell would have saved enough fuel potentially to come out in front. It definitely would have given us a good battle for the last 15 minutes. Unfortunately, he had that speeding penalty and ends up instead down in 13th overall, as we take a look back at this battle for 4th and 5th in the Pro Bronze.
Yeah, Gray really trying to see if he could find a way by before the spoon curve that time, but nothing happening. Malcavara moves straight past Kubin on the approach to 130R, so that looked very comfortable. I think Kubin just kind of allowed him by in the end. But how's this battle developing? We see Carragher in the background trying to get the inside on Reagan, and Reagan just has to slot in behind in the end. But yeah, just in front of them, Peck and Gray looking super close as well as they head into Casio Triangle. And yeah, actually instant for Gray, so we'll see in a minute whether that was contact or whether Gray just outbraked himself, but that's going to allow Carragher an opportunity to try and get by as well. But yeah, they did look super close as they approached Casio Triangle that time. And Carragher completes the move, then Gray does have to relinquish. He settles in and issue ahead for Peck, so very wide through turn 1, so just struggling a little bit at the minute to keep hitting his marks, keep it nice and consistent. And again, he's going to be under pressure from Carragher, who's gained those 2 spots already and should be a 3rd anytime soon, I'd say. Let's have a look then at exactly what happened into Casio. Yeah, I saw they were super close as they come out of 130R. So is there going to be contact, or does Gray just outbrake himself completely? Yeah, he just outbrakes himself. In fact, they both outbraked themselves a little bit. Peck did go very deep into the chicane as well, but yeah, Gray just overcooked it even more.
That's not the first time we've seen drivers run wide at turns 1 and 2 either, especially not in this later stage of the race, with tyres definitely not up to the same grip levels as they were near the start of the race and in qualifying and practice. so drivers definitely will be struggling for a bit of grip. And one person who's not struggling for any grip out there is Carragher, because he is all over the back of Peck at the moment. Peck's tyres clearly gone as he goes through Spoon now, and I think we might be seeing what is the word I'm looking for here?
Ooh,
a
big
setup.
oversteer moment for Peck there as well, as they come off the Spoon. And yeah, just lost all the momentum for him, and now Carragher, just able to drive straight by him, but well, not quite by him, but should be in a strong position for 130R. But yeah, that was lucky from Peck that he didn't end up spearing into a wall or anything. It managed to gather it back up. Here's Gray challenging straight away on Peck. Are they going to outbrake himself into Carragher? They don't, fortunately. And Gray trying to just barely keep his nose in, has to give the space, loses the rear on the second curb. And yeah, that allows Reagan the opportunity just to sneak straight by. Great little battle here between what was 4 cars, now 3, as we can see Carragher's broken away. And I dare say it's going to continue for a couple more laps still. Reagan going defensive into, attacking into turn 1. I think it was defending from Ray initially, but no, he's attacking Peck. And Peck gives him loads and loads of room. Should be able to get a better drive off the corner. And then into the inside line for the first of the S's. Oh, Gray just overcooks it completely. That looked pretty poor judgment there on first viewing from Gray, just completely tagging Reagan round. I mean, what are you going to do into the first? As I said, 2 cars in front of you are kind of side by side. There's nowhere for you to go. Needed just been a bit more patient that time by. But yeah, unfortunate that nice little battle got resolved there in a fairly unceremonious way. So here it is from Gray's view. Yeah, we can see Peck and Reagan side by side as they come into the first of the turns, and Gray just so hot. Hit both cars. In fact, it sounded like from the onboard, it kind of sounded like he tagged the side of Gray initially on the left before then hitting the rear Reagan. So yeah, that's not how you want to kind of conclude that battle, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely not ideal, as Dadswell, Gannon and Nealon now are heading through.
I think we're on the final lap as well, by the way, Dane. So
yes, they are.
That's
right at the start. So.
Yeah, that's where we can see going through the S's and up through Dunlop Curve now, and there's only 15 seconds left on the timer. So yeah, that's going to be final lap, and say an opportunity maybe in bronze for a change of position. I can see Luke Davis looking pretty close to the car behind of Robert Odom, so could be a little bit of movement there. Third and sort of second and third, or it's Davis on Kosh Kelly, sorry, the other way around. So Kelly under lots of pressure now. Luke Davis was 2 or 3 seconds back last time I looked, so it was a slow lap last time both from Kosh Kelly, 2:01.34, and that's what's allowed Davis to close right up. So I'll have to keep an eye on the timing screen as they complete this final lap to see exactly where that develops. Patrick Gannon looking comfortable still over Nian, so he wasn't able to gap Nian after the pit stops, but certainly he looked a little bit more comfortable than Nian did with Gannon behind him in the first half of the race. And all it was that 1 lap difference in pit strategy that made the difference for Gannon and allowed him to take that step ahead. But Tom Dadswell, like I said, he had a pretty tough kind of first half of the race, just sitting in behind Malcavara, pressuring. I mean, how much was he kind of fuel saving? How much was he trying to push hard? We'll have to find out in the interview afterwards, but really let off the hook in the second half of the race. Tom Dadswell just into Casio Triangle to finish things up over both the curves, and yeah, that's going to be an almost perfect season for Dadswell, looking dominant in the Pro Gold class all season long. Congratulations to him, finishing up in the Finding Speed GT3 League. Gannon did take first position in Pro Silver over Nian as expected, and yeah, they look very happy with that for both of them. How is that battle between Kosh Kelly and Luke Davis going on? Kelly feeling the need to go defensive on the approach to 130R. Is Odom's gonna try and cut back? He does, but nothing quite happening that time by. Looks clean for both of them on the exit. No opportunity for Kelly to run wide. And yeah, I think Luke Davis there knows that that battle is done, as they almost get tripped up in front by the very slow Nitro Racing driver behind. But Kosh Kelly does hold on for that Pro Bronze win. So yeah, good job from all 3 classes. Like I say, they showed us some good battling all the way through the race. And Suzuka, like I say, it wasn't one of maybe the classics of the season, Dane, but yeah, we saw some nice little battles out there, and unfortunately not too many incidents in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, we didn't see that many incidents. There were, as always, lots of small isolated incidents. We didn't see any massive things happen at the start of the race. That one incident involving maybe 5 or 6 drivers at the very beginning. But yeah, lots of good, clean racing there. It was a very good race to end off a pretty good season, all things considered. We have got our champion still doing, well, I'm assuming our champion. He's had an almost perfect season. If he's not the champion, I don't know who would be. But that's well out there, still doing some laps. So I'm assuming he knows he's champion as well. So this is, oh, there he goes. He stops on cue as always. Every time I talk about him, he ends up stopping. So that's well just outside of the East Circuit or the West Circuit pit lane. Getting joined by a couple of the other drivers there as well. Yeah, fantastic season that all the drivers have had, and yeah, lots of drivers very happy with their performances out on the circuit. And I believe we also have those team standings as well. I'm not sure who has taken those. Those weren't very close, but I think it was still close enough that there could have been an upset, depending on whether or not drivers had some issues in their teams. Of course, those team results are based on the top 2 drivers from each team overall, so not including those driver-specific classes. Race results for Pro Gold. Tom Dadswell taking the win and also the championship as well, so massive congratulations to him. Stephen Brumfield inheriting 2nd place after Mikko Malkavara had that terrible pit lane speeding penalty after the limiter just did not engage. He finishes in 3rd place after a pretty decent comeback drive, it must be said. Roman Kubin started 3rd and ended up in 4th after a bit of a spin into 130R, out of 130R I should say, ended up in the wall on that occasion. And Dominika Jovesa finishes in 5th, 21 laps down. He didn't have the best of times out there. Patrick Gannon takes the win by just under a second over Steen van Neerland in Pro Silver. Paul L finishes in 3rd, Anthony Beck in 4th, and Jacko Boschoff in 5th. The rest of the results are up on the screen there. Ollie Morgan didn't finish the race, unfortunately, but everybody else did. So 10 drivers from Pro Silver finishing that race. Finally, Pro Bronze. There we go. It is Kosh Kelly taking the win by just over a second ahead of Luke Davis. Robert Odoms in 3rd, just 5 seconds behind. Alex Peck out in 4th position, had a pretty good battle with a couple of drivers near the end there. Angel Pedrero in 5th place there. Timothy Bray really was leading for a while and really should have been leading right until the very end, but unfortunately got caught up in a completely unrelated incident and finishes in 6th after, again, pretty decent recovery drive. The rest of those results are up on the screen as well. A couple notable drivers having issues throughout that race, but it is time to have a chat with who I'm assuming is our champion. He is waiting. He's the only driver waiting for an interview. He joins us now. It is the one and only Tom Dadswell. Tom, can you hear us?
I can.
Well, first of all, massive congratulations on taking the win here in the final round at Suzuka. I am 99% sure that secures you the championship as well, so big congratulations there. If you haven't won it, I don't really know who else would. But yeah, rounds off a very enjoyable season for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been great. Obviously done season 1 with my teammate Mark. We got a 1-2 in that as well, but Mark won it that time. So it's nice to get the win this time.
Yeah, and you had some pretty good battles with a variety of different drivers. Obviously, you had Mikko today. You've been battling with Ted throughout a couple of rounds of the season as well, but always seeming to be the one driver right up near the front. This time, maybe a little bit more different, where you're in 2nd place. I know for most of the season, you've been the driver leading for some of the race, at least near the start. But this time, I am assuming what you did is this is your race strategy: is stick behind and save fuel, because it looks like your pit stop was a bit slower, a bit quicker there, I should say.
Yeah, I managed to save the extra lap over Nico. And then Mark, my teammate, came into the Discord and told me that he maybe sped in the pit lane or something. I'm not too sure what it was, but being unfortunate for him. It's going to be a great race in the end, I think. It would have been mega close.
Yeah, it definitely would have been close. It was very close for the first half of the race. If it wasn't down to fuel strategy and say it was just a half an hour sprint, no pit stops required, do you think you would have the pace to get past him? I know obviously you would have been sticking behind to save the fuel, but if you didn't have to save fuel, do you think you would have been able to get past him at the end?
I'm not sure. I think he was running a slightly different setup. I think he was running a lot lower wing, so he was a lot quicker down the straight, which would have made it like very difficult to overtake. Because through the first sector, that's where I was gaining most of my time on him, like with the higher downforce. So I think overtaking would have been very, very difficult.
Yeah, that's always it's always a bit of a bummer when the driver in front of you is running a lower downforce setup, because there's almost no chance to get past them. They just sort of pull away from you in the straights. It's very demoralizing when that happens. I've got one final question for you. Out of the 5 rounds of the championship, we visited 5 pretty different circuits, really. What is your favorite of the 5 rounds of this season as the season wraps up here at Suzuka?
Road America. I think this is by far probably one of my favorite tracks in the whole game. So to see that come up on the schedule was quite nice.
It is one of those circuits that always does seem to pop up on the schedule, so it's probably a good circuit to have as your favorite, because you almost always get it.
Yeah.
Well, that's certainly very interesting. I think probably my favorite round, having watched, was Hungaroring. Was pretty fun to watch. I never watched the race there on iRacing, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, Tom, first place here at Suzuka. I'm presuming first place in the championship as well. We'll see if we can get those championship results in the next couple of minutes before we wrap up. But if not, yeah, congratulations on a very good season for yourself and Altitude Esports as well. Before we let you go for the final time, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, just the whole team, Altitude Esports, Mark, Jason. They've all been a great help over the last 5 rounds. And obviously our sponsors, SDK Esports, Freem, and some stickers.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. Congratulations on the win here tonight and the championship as well. Hopefully we'll see you back on track very, very soon. But until then, thank you very much.
Cool, thank you.
Well, it was great to hear from our race winner here at Suzuka. I think that might be one of the first times we've actually heard from Tom Dadswell as well. So good to hear from him there at the end of a very good season in this Finding Speed GT3 League. Lee, do we have any updates on the points?
Yes, they're going to be available for the overlay momentarily, sir. You have a little bit more filling to do.
All right. Well, I think a good place to start, I think if Samuli will be so kind, is to look at the very start of the race, because we did have not too many overtakes happen, but a couple of drivers gained 4 or 5 places when we had a bit of an incident heading into the Degness. So we'll take a look at the race start then. It was Miko who had control of the field, and straight out of the Casio Triangle, bang, onto the throttle right about here. Off he went. And yeah, massive gap that he already had. And then it was all Dadswell's job to try and keep Steen Van Illen just behind him. They went side by side down the front straight and in towards turns 1 and 2. And we are going to focus on the Nitro Racing car just behind here in the 333 car. We'll see what happened heading into the Degness is what I'm most interested in. We got single file the entire way through the field from the very beginning. They went through turns 1 and 2 and nice and clean single file right from the start. A little bit of a look up the inside for a couple of drivers, but nothing that actually materialized. And here is where we started to see the first issues forming, and it is for this 333 car with the Porsche. We're looking at David Erdin. He was leading at this time the Pro Bronze category, and we'll see what happened here into the Degness. He goes through the first one pretty cleanly and then finds himself on the inside on the grass. Is it a big chunk of curb that he takes? I think it is, maybe. No contact? Yes, there was contact. He got a bit loose and then gets collected by a driver behind, hits the wall and slides back into the path. Didn't actually immediately take anybody out, but it was just running into the back of him that took out a few drivers and caused a big old checkup, which took out a couple more drivers as well. At the same time as this was all going on, Alan Carrigay, another one of the Nitro Racing team drivers, they all seemed to get involved in some kind of issue throughout tonight's event. It seemed like they had terrible luck in today's meeting, even two of them getting into each other. And then at the same time as all that was happening, something else happened here at the hairpin. So very unfortunate stuff at the very start of the race, but that just about wraps up all of the main issues that we saw throughout the race. We obviously had a couple of drivers making contact. We had that issue at pit entry involving Stephen Brimfield and a couple of other drivers as well. Timothy Bray involved in that one, taking him out of the Pro Bronze lead. But yeah, it was, for the most part, Lee, a very, very clean event.
No, it was good to see. Like I say, it was looking super promising in lap 1, and then just unfortunate that instant halfway around. But no, it was good overall. Right, so we have provisional championship results. So, you know, pending any steward decisions and that sort of stuff. But in the Pro Gold category, exactly as we kind of had deduced, Tom Dadswell ended up with a pretty comfortable lead with 198 points over kind of a little bit of a surprise on our side. Stephen Broomfield jumping up into second in the Pro Gold with 163, so ending up 35 points off. But Yusuke Katai, who wasn't available for the round tonight, finishing third with 143. Mika Makavara then 141. So yeah, he could well have got that second place in the championship, I would guess. And then Jensen Edginson's in fifth. For the Pro Silver class, we had Stin Van Neen, who took the class championship win over Anthony Beck by 9 points. Jacob Boshoff then another 15 down, and Patrick Gannon finishing even with Yako third and fourth. Dara Edginson's then in fifth. So yeah, congratulations to Stin Van Neen as well. And then in the Pro Bronze class, Timothy Bray just by 3 points in the end over Kosh Kelly. So it could well have been important there at the end. Timothy Bray, Kosh Kelly, defending from the Luke Davis it was at the end. You know, it was so close with how the points are going to end up. It could well have been that if Kelly had lost that top spot, it could have made a difference in the championship. But as it turned out, yeah, it wasn't quite enough. Alex Peck then in third with 161 points. Angel Pedrero fourth with 159. And Luke Davis in fifth with 155. So yeah, congratulations to Timothy Bray for the Pro Bronze win. And then for the Team Championship, we're looking at Race Gear ending up with 293 points, Altitude Esports 256, Ignium Motorsport Park 211, Indy Autosport 208, and Ignium Motorsport 203 points. So yeah, like I say, they're all provisional results, but yeah, those are now including the dropped round that we had been waiting for kind of earlier on in the evening to check. So, like I say, looked comfortable for Dadswell and Stin in the end in the championship there, Dane. But yeah, very, very close for Bray, just about taking that Pro Bronze win.
Yeah, it was always good to see some close championship battles right to the very end. But yeah, a pretty awesome season. I've really enjoyed the 4 rounds of it that I covered. I missed the first round at Road Atlanta, unfortunately, but yeah, the 4 rounds that I covered have been fantastic. I cannot wait to see what Mr. Finding Speed Russell Barnes has planned for a potential 4th season of the series, and see if we can get covering that again, because yeah, I would definitely love to. These drivers have been great. It's been very enjoyable to cover this series, and yeah, the drivers have all been fantastic. We've seen some fantastic clean, for the most part, racing as well. So yeah, really good stuff.
No, absolutely. And say thanks again to series sponsor Acertech Sim Sports. So you can find out more about them at acertech.com, asetek.com. So they provide Invicta pedals for the competitive gamer, racing enthusiast who wants an immersive sim racing experience. Invicta pedals have a hydraulic brake cylinder and a proper clutch bite point, so they differentiate from other manufacturers by having a true life feel and intuitive setup, all to give you the best and most realistic experience of driving on a real circuit. Thanks as well to Apex Racing Academy, providing 29 data packs, track guides, integration with virtual racing school, weekly group coaching sessions, and more. You can find out more about them at apexracingac.com. So, like you say, that's going to be the season done for Finding Speed. Like I say, it's been a great 5 rounds Road Atlanta, Hungaroring, Road America, Nürburgring, and then finishing up here at Suzuka. Very, very good schedule to pick, I think, for these GT3 cars. And like you say, hopefully we shall see them back again for season 4 in 2022. Hopefully we can see some more great racing then as well. So just before we leave you, just a reminder that if you enjoyed the coverage tonight and indeed the previous races, make sure you've subscribed on Apex Racing TV. We have broadcasts running most, if not every evening. Tomorrow night we have SRS Weekend Warriors and IGP Fun in the F3 cars. That's at 19:55 GMT for SRF and 21:25 for IGP Fun. Then we've got US based 01:15 GMT kind of on Sunday night is the Cross Series League of Off-Road at the minute. Off-Road Pro 4 Series is what they're looking after. And then on Monday we've got ARL Mazda Cup, IndyCar Open Series, ARL GT3. Like I say, we've got them rolling through kind of every evening. So if you want to see more, then please do subscribe. So that will be us wrapping up the season here. Please do join us again for future broadcasts. And like I say, hopefully we'll see season 4 here of Finding Speed back again very soon. Lee Thompson and Dane Baird looking after you on commentary, with Samulu Kumo on the production. And we shall see you again for the next event very soon. Thank you.